Hey there, my name's Robin Dreek, and I'm the author of The Code of Trust and founder of PeopleFormula.com. And today we're talking on Dov Baron's show on leadership, and we're going to be talking about 4 things that you're going to do to inspire trust in others. We're going to talk about how to recognize when you've lost that trust in others, and most importantly, how you can inspire people to action rather than convince them to want to do things. So stay tuned.
Congratulations! You are tuned into Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Show, the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 executives and those who are dedicated to creating a quantum leap in leadership. Your host, Dov Baron, is the founder of FullMontyLeadership.com. He's an executive mentor to leaders like you, a contributing writer for Entrepreneur Magazine, CEO World, and he's been featured on CNN, Fox, CBS, and many other notable sites. Dov Baron is an international business speaker who was named by Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire. Now, over to Dov Baron.
Welcome, dear friends, fans, and fellow aficionados of leadership excellence. I'm your host, Dov Baron, founder of Full Monty Leadership, and I'm here to assist you tapping into your deep greatness so that you can reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, in your life, and in your leadership. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives, part of the Full Monty interview series. I just said fart of. That's very good, but we'll change it to part of the Full Monty interview series, where today we're going to take an insider look at trust. Is there a specific code to follow in order to build it? Or is it something that some people just naturally have? If you're a new listener, a new viewer, thank you for joining us. Strap yourself in. We're about to go full Monty. If you're a regular, big thank you to you for making us the #1 podcast globally for Fortune 500 listeners. And we are grateful to be cited by Inc.com as the #1 podcast to make you a better leader. So thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. And listen, there are over 1 million podcasts out there. Thousands of them are focused on business and leadership. But there's only one show that focuses on the heart and soul of business and leadership, and you're tuned into it right here with me, Dov Baron. Remember, we always need your help in staying relevant, so please get yourself over to iTunes, rate, review, and subscribe to the show. All right, let's strip it down and dive right in. As a leader, whether you're a CEO, C-suite leader, a sales leader, an entrepreneur, a leader in any capacity, you know that to be a great leader, your people have got to trust you. But trust can be hard to find these days. In my last book, Fiercely Loyal, one of the things I talked about was how millennials just don't trust big business. They don't trust big government. They don't trust big business. So how can you tap into that trust? Is there a code? Well, stay tuned because you're about to find out. My guest today on this episode is Robin Dreek. Now, Robin Dreek is a United States Naval Academy graduate. Thank you very much. He is a Marine Corps officer, FBI counterintelligence, and former head of the Behavioral Analysis Program. He received advanced training and operational experience in social psychology and in the practical application of the science of relationship development. Eventually, he rose to direct the Behavioral Analysis Program in the Federal Law Enforcement Agency, and Robin today is currently an agent at the FBI. So ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome Robin Dreek!
Thanks, Dave. How are you?
I'm good, mate. Welcome. Good to have you here.
It's good to be here and talking about such a great topic. And as part of your intro, absolutely, trust is at a real low, I think, in our society, and it's a premium people are searching for.
Absolutely,
so I think it's really relevant.
And we're going to definitely dive into that. But before we do, I've got to go for the jugular.
Sure.
Your job at the FBI, are you the white man's Morgan from Criminal Minds?
A lot of Criminal Minds questions. Probably the most common one I get is, do I get to ride that jet? No. When I was running the program, I had a lot of United miles.
Yeah, it's all more glamorous on TV.
Absolutely. Their office spaces are nicer. Their equipment is better. Their transportation's better. You'll be happy to know that, the American tax dollars are not paying for all those nice things. No.
Oh, really? Damn.
Unfortunately.
I was really hoping, I'm trying to remember her name, the girl who helps them, the tech girl.
Yeah, it's funny. My kids are watching all these Criminal Minds shows. My friends do. Mindhunter is the next one they're trying to get me into.
Exactly.
Yeah, and when you live this stuff, it kind of really bores you because, like anything, when you're doing your job, it's just something you do.
It's just what you do.
It's
Absolutely.
just what you do. So, watching it in Hollywood eyes is always fascinating.
Of
They're pretty
course.
good. They do a decent job of following the science behind these things, but they're condensing a year's worth of work or a couple years worth of work into an hour episode.
Of course, yeah. I mean, all these things are solved in an hour. Yeah, okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's
Just
realistic.
perfectly all the time.
Yeah, exactly. So, coming to trust, in 2017, the Elman Trust Barometer revealed that trust is in a crisis in the world. Gallup
Yeah.
News said that America's trust in each of the three branches of the federal government is as low as it was back in the early 1970s, and we know what that was like.
Yeah.
Only 9% of Americans reported confidence in Congress in 2016. Your new book is called The Code of Trust. Is it a secret code? And if it is, should we please give that book to every member of Congress starting now?
Yeah, no kidding. It's not a secret code, and it's even. I mean, every day it's eroded more and more. Just watching the news, even in my own organization, being hounded because of executives making decisions. Again, it doesn't even matter what actual actions people take; it's what the perceptions are from others, and they're lacking everywhere. Whether it's every arm of government and in business and everywhere else. These four elements that I use when trying to inspire trust. You have to talk in terms of other people's priorities
Right.
and what's important to them. You have to seek their thoughts and opinions. You have to validate them and their thoughts and opinions non-judgmentally, and you empower them with choice. And I'll tell you, and this, I've read your stuff, and that's why I love talking with people like yourself, because when you get it, you get it.
Sure.
And the easiest thing that erodes trust is a lack of transparency. And when it looks like you're trying to be deceptive, when it looks like you're trying to hide things, and when someone's trying to seek that transparency from you to understand from their point of view why you took a certain action or why you said a certain thing, and then you hide things or you have subterfuge or deception, no one's going to trust you. It's a guarantee. It's absolutely guaranteed you're not going to have trust.
No, you're saying something there, Robin, that I want to really address, because we live in a very interesting time, and I know you're aware of this.
Yeah.
And I certainly agree with everything you just said, and you know that from my own work. However, we live in this time of great dichotomy. And the dichotomy is this. We have a government, we have the President of the United States calling the people who we're supposed to trust, i.e. the FBI or journalists, being fake news and being corrupt, when it comes to Comey or whether, whoever it might be. And these are people who are supposedly being very, we've put our trust in.
Mm-hmm.
Then we've got a president who appears to be hiding lots, who appears to not have transparency, who won't give up the tax forms. It's kind of weird, because the person who's in the position of most trust seems to be, according to your guidelines and my own around what it takes to build trust, seems to be in complete contradiction of that, and yet is still the head of the government in the United States and potentially at least the most powerful person in the world. Help us understand this, particularly from your place of understanding trust, because it seems like such a massive contradiction to me.
Sure. First, whenever I'm talking in terms of these things, I always have to caveat I'm speaking for myself, not on behalf of any organization.
Absolutely.
And it's funny whether you bring up, and I won't limit it to the president or organization or anyone. It's just very, very few people can actually maintain all four elements that inspire trust.
Right.
Because again, one of the main ones you're talking about is transparency.
Of course.
And there's a lot of non-transparency going on all over the place right now. Whether it's someone's calling someone fake news, whether it's an executive calling someone out, or claiming that there's a president claiming something, or an FBI director, all these things. There's lots of lack of transparency.
Yes.
But these things can often be offset to a certain degree by other elements of trust. In other words, so we can talk about Trump. People wonder, well, if he has lack of transparency in all the other areas, so there's lack of trust, how can he be elected? Well, remember, that's one element that entails trust. Other elements are talking in terms of other people's priorities. he did a very good job.
He did a masterful job of that.
Absolutely. And so that offset to a certain degree a lack of transparency in other areas. So and I guess what I'm trying to say is the key to this is really there are very, very few human beings that can actually encompass all the elements that inspire trust. And when you do, when you find that individual and if you become that individual, hold on tight. These are the people you want to be with, because these are the people that are going to excel and prosperity in their lives, and most importantly, the lives of everyone they touch, because true leaders and true people that inspire trust are about being a resource for the success of others in all these elements.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me because I'm asked about the same questions. I'm asked the same things, right? And I said, Trump was masterful at communicating as if he was one of the people. And I actually wrote a piece on it called Decoding Trump that went viral. It was picked up by Fox and other people because one of the things I said is the great irony, the great con is that the man who was born with poisoning from a silver spoon in his mouth is speaking as if he's a member of the people. Mm-hmm. And people are buying it. And for me, it was incredible that people could not get that gap because he did so well at communicating as if he had the interests of the people, and he sold a tax plan on it. Now, again, this sounds like a Trump bashing, and it's really not. It's to have people grasp this piece, because this is part of your code of your 4 pieces, and I want to get into it in greater detail. But one of those pieces is transparency, and I am a great champion of transparency, as I know you are, but it's evidence that you can get away with a certain degree of lack of that if you move into a position which makes you look like the champion of those you're speaking to or for. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely. And then you can really offset things. And believe me, and you hit it right on. There's not Trump bashing or pro-Trump, because I'm confused by so many people that do what I do and what you do for a living, because the first time you take a side in anything, half the world's going to line up against you. So I'm never about taking sides of right or wrong. It's about understanding and talking in terms of the other person. Because, for doing what I do for over 21 years, I've had to interview people all over the world and try to develop trust so that we could share information, protect their interests, and protect the national security of my country. You don't do that by taking a side. You do that by understanding. And so it's interesting, I love human behavior. I'm fascinated by successful people because, there's elements of everyone that's successful that are beautiful and majestic, and everyone's working on something as well. I find the elements that, besides, all right, so he has a lack of transparency in a lot of areas. And remember, transparency doesn't even matter what you think. All it matters is what the other people think. So if someone calls you out on something for having a lack of transparency, the only thing you can do is give them the transparency in the areas that they think you aren't transparent in. But the things, like recently, he's done at Mar-a-Lago, and he brought in all the people, all the supporters on the street impromptu and gave them, a holiday treat. That's magnificent. Right. What he's demonstrating is a lack of planning, a lack of anything. And when you have a lack of planning and just giving the image and impression of acting impromptu, that's an element of transparency and genuineness. And so again, that starts offsetting all the other things.
Yeah, and this is the thing that I want people to grasp in this from your book, which I think is so great, is that it's not one thing. We like to think it's one thing, but it's not. And it's this balancing act between this. As you said, if somebody has the 4, wow, that's magnificent, and that's somebody we want to trust deeply, and we will trust deeply.
And that's someone who becomes, like you say, fiercely loyal, because they have all these elements that because people very rarely do things and have a job because of the thing they're doing. Most of the time, if you're really enjoying your life, you're not working, you're following the people that you love being around.
Exactly.
And that's it. I in my entire career, in my entire life, people always ask me, so Robin, how'd you get to take over the behavioral analysis program? I said, that was easy. I just followed good people. This was not my goal. It was not my dream. It just happened because I'm doing things where I wanted to be around good people that inspired me to be a better person to inspire me, to be a patriot. That's all I've ever wanted to be when I was very young. I'm a Reagan baby here in the United States, and and so he inspired my generation to be patriotic and be selfless. So that was it. So I followed people that I had that same sense.
But you just brought up an interesting word there, because inspiritus, inspiration.
Yes.
So I think that there are very bright people who can be incredibly convincing.
Yes.
And they can manipulate that, and they can use that, and they can certainly win people over. And there are people who are inspiring, inspiritus, who inspire something great within us. What do you see as the difference between convincing and inspiring in people as a leader?
I love that inspiritus that you're using that phrase, like that word. Such a powerful word. Matter of fact, it became to me the most powerful, majestic aspect of this entire thing of trust. Because of I'm probably such a weird dichotomy. So I'm a counterintelligence guy, yet I'm the guy that's going to be most truthful with you in the entire world. Because all I ever learned was, if you start using deception, you start trying to convince people of things, you start trying to manipulate them, there will always be buyer's remorse. You will always have bad branding. People will always walk away from you wondering, I wonder what he really wanted. Because I was always talking in terms of myself. Because when you're thinking in terms of convincing someone of something, you're not thinking about them at all. All you're doing is thinking of yourself and what you want, and you're trying to have all these skills and tools and techniques to get what you want. And so that's not leadership. That's self-centeredness.
Absolutely.
And so the difference is, and it came to me, I was doing these things. That's why placing these labels and words and meanings on things are so important, because it helps you realize at a higher level what's working and what's not, and what's true and what's not. And when I finally realized, and this is probably about 2 years ago now, someone asked me about something or some situation, and I always think of myself, all right, so why should they want to do it? Not why not how I can convince them. And when I came upon that, I said, oh my God, I can't convince them to do this, because why would they? How can I inspire them to want to? And then that's when it hit me. When I'm thinking of inspiring someone to take action, when I'm thinking of inspiring someone to do something, inspire someone to follow me, inspire someone to give me information or share something with me, I am now thinking entirely about them. Because inspiration, when you want to inspire someone, you have to think in terms of their priorities. You have to think in terms of what's important to them. You can't argue their context. You can't judge them in any way. And ultimately, if you're empowering them with choice, it's all about them. And so inspiration is totally about the other person. Convincing is totally about yourself. And when you, especially when you start doing this over repeated periods of time, and you demonstrate this over multiple engagements, multiple interactions, that's when it becomes truly majestic. So that difference between convincing and inspiring, it is the gold standard by which I try to live.
Yeah, it's a very interesting mind shift, I think, for a lot of people. Yes. It is.
So,
I mean, I work with a lot of people in leadership, as you know, and sometimes I work with people who are top of the game in sales. And when I interview those people, it's exactly the same. There are the manipulative little shits who can do quite well to a point. Yes. And I realize I'm probably being a little more direct than you're used to in the language of being where you're from. But, they're manipulative little shits, and they can do pretty good. Yes. But the top of the game people, the guys who are right at the top, they don't have that sales technique strategy shit that you hear a lot about. Right. What they have is, I care about my customer because I love what I sell and I want to know how it improves people's lives. So I say, what do you need? Yes. Is this a fit? If it is, listen, this is what you should buy because it's the best thing for you to have. And it's that simple. And it's like, so it's all about you, the other person. And that, I think that is where we make mistakes. I think that is where we see politics fall down. Yep. Again, is there an integrity to it, which is, of course, another important piece here, which is, okay, so I speak as if I care about what you want, and I'm trying to find out what you want, but then I have no integrity with it, which is why people don't trust Congress right now. Mm-hmm. So they're not having integrity with that. But when you actually find out and you actually focused on and committed to what people want, that's a powerful sales strategy. Because you're not trying to convince.
And it's the easiest. It is, I work with, like yourself, I work with a lot of different corporations outside. And I worked with this automotive group up in New York State in the last couple of months. And, I always kind of, half jokingly say, you don't want to come across as a used car salesman, which makes you feel creepy.
Right.
But this group, they got it. This is probably one of the most powerful groups I've ever worked with because their entire management team, executives, and everyone in this company was all about the customer experience and the employee experience. They wanted everyone to feel part of this family. And their entire goal was to make people feel safe and comfortable in whatever automobile they buy. So what they did was they have multiple dealerships, so everyone can suit themselves the way they wanted to. I mean, their philosophy was not about making the sale. Their philosophy was about taking care of the community, taking care of the people. I mean, they started a cancer research institute up in their hometown. I mean, these people, and I met the owner, the CEO. This was not a manipulative ploy. There was lots of what I call congruence between what's being said and the emotion that's in here. Because what happens is very few people in the world wake up in the morning saying, all right, today I'm just going to be an ass. But what happens is that's what
comes out. There might be a couple.
Not everyone. A couple. I always get one or two in the audience that say, no, I'm an ass. I'm like, okay.
There's a couple of those, and I think I bump into them occasionally.
We all do, and it's okay. Because again, you can't judge. If that's a prosperous life for them and that's what they enjoy, great.
Whatever lights your candle, mate.
Absolutely. So when you have that kind of congruence, because I always say, who's ever had that creepy car salesman effect? And I always get the hands raised up. I said, well, why? I said, I always love to break down an emotion you get behind a behavior you witness, because our ancient mammalian brain back here is very acute at recognizing things that are off. And so if we can give some labels and meanings to these things that make us feel off, we can now know things to avoid and know things to recognize. And so that incongruence, that creepiness you're feeling is basically a difference between what they're saying, because I'll tell you, these slick salesmen, these manipulators, these con artists, they're saying some great stuff. They got
absolutely.
it. But their emotion is all about them. And so that's where we get that creepy feeling. That's why trust, fierce loyalty, it all comes from, what are you feeling here? And how do you make this congruent with it?
You say there are 4 statements that guarantee that you demonstrate affiliation and value. First of all, let's look at what the distinction is for you between affiliation, value, and then let's look at what those 4 statements are.
Sure. So I love blending the world that we live in and understanding our biology, our genetics, our brain, and all the brain chemistry that's going on. Because we are ancient tribal beings, are biologically and genetically.
Absolutely.
And so because we're ancient tribal beings, we seek very, very simple things. We're seeking affiliation because we want to be affiliated, because if we're part of a tribe of 10, 20, 30, thousands of years ago, it meant our survival. Yeah. Our brain chemically rewards us when we're feeling those feelings of affiliation. Yes. And even more so when we're having our value demonstrated to that tribe. Our dopamine's flowing, serotonin, oxytocin in bloodstream. Our brain is firing, saying this is fantastic for us to be involved with. And so now what we need to do as human beings is, how do we demonstrate affiliation to others, and how do we demonstrate their value? And I love this analogy, because I always take people, I said, all right, who here has got some great relationships? And all the hands go up. I said, great. Think about that one great relationship, those couple great relationships you have, and how many times a day, what percentage would you say that you are actually demonstrating affiliation and value to that human being by your thoughts, words, and actions? And probably maybe 5 or 10%. Your best relationships are maybe at 5% of the time that you're actually demonstrating their value to you. And so now here's a simple thing. I said, what do you think these relationships would do, and everyone else you touch, if you can bump that up to 100% of what comes out of your mouth, what you type in a text or what you type in an email, is demonstrating that value and affiliation? What do you think the possibility of that trust and that fierce loyalty is? It's astronomical. It becomes flawless, because if you make it about the other person and you demonstrate these things, why wouldn't they align to you? Because what you're doing is you're talking totally in terms of what they value, and you're talking in terms of what they view as prosperity. And now when you're offering yourself and your resources for their prosperity, I can guarantee their behavior. They're going to do it.
Absolutely.
Because it's completely about them.
Absolutely. So what are those 4 statements
Yeah. So what I will build into everything I do and say is very, very simple. It takes a little muscle memory when you first start doing it.
Sure.
And I'll tell you what, this just came from me analyzing the people that are naturally born leaders, the natural born inspirers. They're doing these things, and this is what they're doing. Number one, they're seeking thoughts and opinions. When you're seeking someone's thoughts and opinions about what they think about something, what they would do, what action they would take, what do you think you should do, you're demonstrating that, one, I trust you because you have value to me, and I value you because what you say is meaningful. And so when you seek someone's thoughts and opinions, you're automatically demonstrating value. And people love to share their thoughts and opinions because we want to be experts in things. Because when
there's
you're
also another piece in that I want to address, and maybe you're going to go there, but I want people to grasp that. That one of the things that stops us from asking for people's thoughts and opinions is because our ego gets in the way, and and we go, oh, I can't be that because I'll seem like I'm weak, and it's this old bullshit training we got around vulnerability as a weakness. But as you've just pointed out, that level of vulnerability is so powerful because it shows me that you care enough to ask my opinion. Number one, that lifts my ego, fluffs me. That's nice. But on top of that, it shows me that your humanity. Yes. And that humanity endears us to each other. Yes. We're not endeared to people who are invincible. We were most endeared to Rocky. And I remind people this all the time. We were so endeared to Rocky. And Rocky, everybody forgets this when I ask them. And then they go, oh yeah, Rocky lost. Yeah. The first fight, the first movie, Rocky lost, and we were all in love with Rocky. It was that vulnerability. That was the power of that movie. Yeah. And so that's what you're saying. When you ask and you actually want the opinions of others, you show that vulnerability, and it's endearing, and it's powerful. So I'm sorry for interrupting you, but I want to sort of nail that home.
Dove, you are right on. Matter of fact, I it's funny. Some people will say, "Well, it's ego and vanity by you saying this." I said, "No, it's not. It's just the truth." The code of trust I'm talking about is flawless, absolutely flawless. The one thing that will undermine it is you and your ego and your vanity.
Exactly.
That's it. Because what will happen is when your ego and vanity creeps in, and I always say it's okay. It will.
Of course it will.
That's why we have safe, trusted people we can sound things off of, where we can do a little dry run with people. How does this sound? How does this make you feel? When I would assemble a team to do a consultation for a case agent on a case somewhere, I assembled at least 3 or 4 people. Why? Was it because I didn't know what I would come up with or want to do? No, because I will have my own bias. I will have my own ego and vanity and my own experiences that I want to possibly tout unwittingly, even though as practiced as you and I can be and others can be, our ego and vanity will creep in. And so we need safe places in which to make sure it's in check. And so I am 100% on board with you. Our ego and vanity are the things that will get in the way, and there will be creep. But you got to create some tools for yourself, some methodologies to keep that from happening, and also recognizing when it does. For me, I'm always hypersensitive to we'll call them. I'm a big Star Wars fan, so maybe vibrations in the Force.
Oh, really? I know nothing about that.
Well, basically,
I'm not a Star Wars geek at all.
Well, you don't have to be. Basically,
look, I got something in my eye.
Okay, yeah, not at all, huh?
Yeah, I'm glad you studied Joe's stuff, so you notice that subtlety.
Yeah, very subtle nonverbal. Yes, the twitching cue of the eye.
Exactly, it's just a micro cue.
And then we'll go to the epidermal layer here.
Exactly.
Stress indicators, pacifiers.
Exactly.
And so I'm always acutely aware of the effect I'm having on others. And so as soon as I see a deviation in norm of behavior, speech pattern, or nonverbal cue, the first thing I'm trying to do is, all right, what did I do to cause that? Something I said, because basically when you're causing discomfort in some way in something, what you basically did was you became disinteresting to them because you're all of a sudden started talking about yourself. People start blanking out on you and stop listening to you when you stop talking in terms of what's important to them. They'll start being polite, but after a while they're going to just walk away. I mean, this is the difference.
That's a great point. That's a great point. I want people to grasp that.
Okay.
That people will start to be polite.
Yes.
This is something I've spoken a lot about, and I think is important for people to grasp, is that I don't trust polite people. I don't. Right? I don't. And you just nailed it. But the reflection is on me, not on them. The reflection is I don't trust polite people because I know they're not telling the truth. But if they're being polite, I've not made it safe for them to be truthful.
Yeah, and you're not talking in terms of what's important to them.
Right, and therefore not made it safe.
Right.
So it's a fascinating piece. So I really like what you said there, Robin. That's why I want to bring that home to people.
Yeah.
Is that people will be polite, and the minute they start being polite rather than engaged, you know you've made it about you rather than about them. You've lost the trust.
Yes.
Brilliant.
And what that is that's ego and vanity creep.
Absolutely. Brilliant.
And so we start out with that, speaking in terms, seeking thoughts and opinions and looking for these cues. Am I on point? And that kind of bleeds. And again, it's more of a flow than a process. But the next thing that we're always making sure we're doing is we're talking in terms of their priorities, their needs, wants, dreams, aspirations, personal, professional, long-term, short-term. What is important to them? And if you don't know it, the first thing you got to find out is what's important to them, because it's going to become the center point of the entire conversation. In order for them to, again, not be polite, that they want to be engaged with the conversation, have a dialogue. And I think an important point to bring out here is before we actually get into demonstrating this value and affiliation, as leaders, we automatically, hopefully, we've already set what we're hoping to gain, our goals, our own personal objectives, because we sensitized ourselves towards those things. I call it that new car effect. You give it a label and meaning, and all of a sudden you see that new car everywhere you bought. I have a Toyota truck. The day I bought my Toyota truck, poof, I see Toyota trucks everywhere.
Of course you do.
And that's what leaders do. That's what engaging people do. Trust. You give it that label and meaning. So that way, and the next step of building that trust and demonstrating that value and affiliation, when you're seeking their thoughts, opinions, and priorities of what's important to them, what's your brain automatically doing? You're aligning those labels and meanings so you have overlapping interests and that's what we're doing when we're building that affiliation. We're finding commonality. And when you take that extra step of figuring out yours and theirs, it's majestic because now you're automatically talking in terms of them. Third, we're going to validate them. Excuse me one sec. And validation is really critical here. And validation, some people will misconstrue that word as agreeing with someone.
Mm-hmm.
No, not necessarily. It might be. But validation is merely seeking to understand that is who they are, the things they're saying, why they're saying them, how they came to be the person they are, and their thoughts and opinions without judgment. That is validation, seeking to understand. Then because
let's stop for a second there, because I think that's something that I don't want to skip over.
Yep.
It's an important piece, because you just said something important, which is that validation doesn't necessarily mean you agree, but you recognize, and my way of saying it is this, is that your reality is real to you. That's all. So it's not about whether I agree.
Right.
So I'll give a great example. My sister and I had a very close. I'm the eldest of 9 kids. The next one in line is my sister. This is a deeply personal story, but my sister, who I was very, very close to in my head. Right. Notice, in my head. Yes. Incredibly close to her. In fact, when I first moved in with a girl I moved in with when I was like 16, 17 years old, she didn't like the fact that I was so close to my sister. She thought, she was also a kid and she was young and she was jealous. It's understandable. But she was like, you two are too close. Now, many, many years later, after I'd left the country and moved and lived in several other countries, I was living in Australia. I called back to the UK, and my sister picked up the phone, and she was kind of grumpy with me, and she handed the phone to my mom. And I said, "What the heck's wrong with Jane?" She says, "I don't know." I said, "Well, why won't she talk to me?" She says, I'm not going to talk about it. I went back to the UK 4 years later. I visited with my sister. I said, "What is the problem? Can we bury the hatchet? Because I don't know what I did."
Right.
And she says, "You were so mean to me when I was a kid." And I'm like, "What? We were really close." And she goes, "No, you were really mean to me. I couldn't understand why you were so mean to me." And I stopped. Fortunately, I was at least bright enough by then. I don't know if I was before. And I said, "You know what? I believe you."
Yeah.
She says, "What do you mean?" I said, "I don't remember it. But if you say it, I know it was true for you." Absolutely. That's it. So I apologize.
Absolutely.
Even though I don't have any memory, and that may be that my own mind has blanked it out because we do that. But the fact of the matter is, it's true for you. And that's what validation is. It's not about agreeing. It's about seeing somebody else's reality as real.
Yes.
So I spoke at the UN last year with a guy who was a neo-Nazi who I helped to de-radicalize, who now runs an amazing organization called Life After Hate, where he helps people who were radicals to do this work, works with the US government and all kinds of great stuff. And we talked about, and he was asked, well, how did Dov de-radicalize you? Dov, I'm born Jewish, helped to de-radicalize a neo-Nazi. And it's, I validated, I understood, I got why he felt the way he did.
Yeah.
And did I agree with it? Absolutely not. But I get it. And this is, I think, an important piece that so many people don't get. They think if you validate, you're agreeing, and you're not. You can just recognize their reality. So thank you for bringing that up, because I think it's important for us all to stop for a moment, because you have to get off that horse of being fucking right. Stop trying to be right and instead see the other person's reality. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Doug, the first time I did that, where I validated someone that I disagreed with, I was probably most powerful. Some of these things become so powerful because they're so anti-intuitive that so you become extremely witting of the effect. And I remember the first time I wanted to correct someone that I thought was wrong, but I said, you know what, if I do this, their shields are going to be up and never want to have another conversation with me. So I said, wow, that's really interesting. I never really thought about it that way before. Help me understand, how'd you come up with that? And all of a sudden, they totally opened up and shared all their thoughts and opinions. I was like, oh, my God. All it took was me not disagreeing with them and not agreeing with them, but seeking to understand them. And now we have communication.
That is so powerful.
And you know this. People aren't necessarily looking for you to agree with them. They're looking to be heard and understood. And when you do that, you have it.
That's great stuff. People are looking to be heard and understood, and so few people feel, and I know because I've done the research on this, so few people feel heard.
So now we got 3 things that you're doing in everything you say or do, and the 4th is when appropriate, I empower people with choice. And again, we do not give people choices unless we value them, unless we have affiliated with them, and we trust the choices they make. Now, here's the magic of this. If you understand what your goals and objectives are, you've taken the time to understand their goals and objectives and priorities, and you've now empowered them with choice, you're naturally going to have overlapping. And so any choice you offer someone is automatically going to be good for you and them. And so it's fantastic.
Give us an example of that, Robert, because that's an important one. Can you give us an example of that to help us understand how that plays out?
Yeah, simply, so I'll use a work scenario. So, it's the difference between walking up to someone and saying, hey, do you want to cooperate with the United States government and help spy against your country? There's no choice there. It's black or white. As
Right.
opposed to, hey, how about this? If you want, why don't we try to get together for maybe 3 cups of coffee over the next month, get to know each other, learn about each other's priorities, and see if we can be a resource for each other. If not, at the end of 3 meetings, we go our separate ways, no harm, no foul. What I've just done with, I've offered an opportunity, I've empowered them with choice, I've talked in terms of what's important to them, and there's no obligation. So I made that entire conversation, that entire offer is different than that, just the facts, ma'am. Hey, this or this. I do it with when someone, especially, back in the, mid 2000s, with the economic hit and people are losing their jobs. People are saying, well, how do I get a good, stable job? I said, well, how can we use these principles? How can we empower someone with choice to make it about the employer so that we do have an opportunity? Instead of saying, hey, I need this job, I need a full-time job. I said, how about this? Hey, how about why don't I come in and work for you for 3 months? At the end of that 3 months, you can assess whether I'm good and I'm given resources that's going to be prosperous for you and your company or not. And if I'm not, then let me know and I'll go my separate way. What did you just gave yourself an opportunity? You made it about them and you empowered them with choice.
Yeah, it's one of the things. I spoke at a launch group that was set for teenagers, and they were teaching them how to be entrepreneurs and launch their own companies. And one of the things I said to them was, your parents won't like me for this statement, but I'm going to suggest to you that you don't go to university. I'm going to suggest to you that you take the money you would go to university with and live off it while you do an internship somewhere that will teach you what you need to do, because you will add value to them. And when you show up from university, you don't come to add value, you come to take something. And
Right.
this is one of the things that we all have to understand is, how can I bring value to? How can I add value to you? And I think that we often forget that. I mean, of course, and I understand it is nature, it is our very being to try and survive, and that is psychological as much as it is biological. And so we're looking at, what's good for me. I get that, and it's a discipline to overcome that in the moment and say, let me make it about them without me feeling like a martyr. Because that's the negative side of that, is that you do that and then you feel like a martyr. Well, I did all this for you.
Well, it's funny is that I get that a lot. Robin, these things sound very humanistic, but aren't you just being a carpet and being walked on? I said, no, because I'm the one that started out with the goal first. Because, you don't need title and position to be a leader. Very few do. You just, it's how you approach. You hit this again. It's another great topic to talk about. What I realized, what I've been doing for my last bunch of years is I'm an efficiency expert. And what I mean is this: I figure out what your job is, and I figure out how I can be a resource to make it as easy as possible for you to be prosperous. I'm in my last couple months of my government career, and I have complete autonomy. Mm-hmm. I have an employment authority. They allow me to do things like this. I've published a couple books. People don't often allowed to do these type of things with my job. And why is it? Well, I figured out what their job was, and I made it easy for them to get promoted. I made it easy for them to be prosperous. Because what I'm doing is I understand what their job is, and I'm bringing resources for them. I just had a young millennial ask me a couple days ago, Robin, how do I do a resume and not say I throughout the entire thing? And I said, well, you can't. It's okay. But the key to do is tout yourself in your experience and your resources that you have in terms of what's important to the company, and how you're going to be a resource for their prosperity and success because of your experiences. Someone asked me the same thing, like, what do you think about the 30-minute elevator pitch? Fine, if you can figure out if what you're saying is in terms of what's important to them that you're talking to. Yes. Otherwise, shut up. You're just wasting their time.
What would you say, like I said, you just said it yourself, you're exiting the FBI, you're going out into the world. What would you say is the best metaphor for what you do now as you move out of the FBI, as you move into being a consultant and what it is you do? What would be the best metaphor for what you do?
I've been doing it. I've been doing this for myself as well since 2010, and sure. and we've said this. I mean, like a couple of my Jedi Masters I've worked with. I'm in a business building relationships and trust. That's all I've ever done. I'm one of these guys. I'll tell you, I'm a horrible investigator. I'm a horrible investigator. What my job is to hear.
I work for the FBI. I'm a horrible investigator.
You don't
I love that.
Yeah, I am. I'm about transparency and truth. But so what I found my niche. I'm not inquisitive about investigating process and procedures of things. That's not my personality. I can, but I'm not near the best. You don't want me doing it. Right. But what I am good at is if I hear a mission statement, what I do is again, this will go back to listening to people. I work very, very hardly. I try very hard to listen to the words that people are saying all the time, especially people that I'm trying to support, my bosses, my colleagues, or anything else, because they're always going to tell you what's important to them. They're going to tell you what's important to them before they even ask you to be a part of it. And so when I'm listening to what's important to them, I hear it, and I will immediately go into being a resource for them. And I start using my network of contacts, friends, associates, and people. And all I do is this. I propagate out, I sensitize them towards things that are important for national security. And if I've been a resource for them without expectation, reciprocity for years, months, decades, whatever, what are they going to do? They're going to come back to me with things that they know. They call it that 6 levels of Kevin Bacon. Yeah. I can honestly tell you, with the things that I try to find out about different, threats to national security, it's the deepest I've had to go is maybe 2 or 3 levels. Yeah. Between my good trusted, good people in my life, good patriots. I'll get a new tasking or new thought and opinion comes out of something that's a vulnerability in our national security. I go poof with it, and I've timed it. My timing for turnaround is anywhere from 3 to 6 months. From not knowing anything about it, when I don't know anything about the threat, I don't know anyone immediately that has information about it. about 3 to 6 month turnaround from propagating that out, continuing to build trust and relationships, and it'll come back to you. You'll find out.
It's amazing. That is absolutely amazing.
And what's that become? And for businesses, what is that? That's branding. That's referrals. That's
of course it is.
Absolutely, and it's there's no difference. I always say when I'm working with clients outside the government, I say, well, how do you want me to frame this for you? Because trust is trust. It's just what's your goal, what's your objective, what's your audience, what are you hoping to get? You just frame it for different audience because human beings are human beings.
Now I was reading your bio stuff, and you become this guy, but it's not who you were.
No.
Right. So I've talked about in my own stuff about how I fell off a mountain, and that was a transformational point in my life, and it led to the transformation in my life, I should say. What was the turning point in your life, in your leadership, that has changed your philosophy and got you to seeing that it's all about trust and relationships now?
Multiple. I think all of us have multiple humbling moments in life that bring us another step on our path because, sure, as you know, too, it's not a destination, it's a journey.
Absolutely.
Thankfully, I'm not a natural born leader. I'm a natural born ass. My former leadership was poke in the eye, kick in the ass, and yell really loud. If you're not doing what I want, I yell louder, and I'm a good leader. So
old school.
Yeah, very much so, and especially that type A personality. That's what we do, and it can be rewarded at a young, in lower levels because you can get things done. And when managers see you get things done, they're going to promote you. But what happens is people stop following you, and they're going to give you 10% of their effort reluctantly, rather than two people giving you 120% willingly. And that's that gold standard different. Probably the most striking one was in the Marine Corps. My first very young second lieutenant in the Marine Corps, new graduate from the Naval Academy. I'd been told very great things about the kind of leader I was, and I was the brigade drill officer as a midshipman of rank at the Naval Academy. Everyone knew I was going Marine Corps. And at my first duty station, I was at Cherry Point, North Carolina. I was in the air wing, the ground side of the air wing in the Marine Corps. We had a lot of second and first lieutenants, and you all get ranked. And we're really bottom heavy. I think we had 14 or 15. And at my first rating, I was ranked last out of all these guys. And I was like, okay, I'm doing something wrong. I have no idea what I'm doing wrong. What did I see? I thought I was a great guy, a great leader, and I'm, a professional and a hard charger, yet I was ranked last. For the first time in my life, leadership-wise, and because I thought I was a natural-born leader. No, I was a natural-born ass. And I remember going to my major at the time and saying to him, I was like, all right, I get it. I'm doing something wrong. What am I doing wrong? And he goes, you just need to be a better leader. And I was like, what's this be like? What the hell is be like? Is a very subjective thing. He was.
True.
And so that became my passion without realizing it back then, was trying to figure out what that be like is, because I didn't have it. Mm-hmm. And so I started really studying, the majestic people around me that had elements of it. And when I started taking that and I got in I did 5 years in the Marine Corps, got out of captain, and I came in the FBI. And again, I had one or two of these Jedi Masters that they were the best human source recruiters on the face of the planet, and they were not manipulators whatsoever. And I just sat back and I watched these guys. I had that on the job training, but I became a behaviorist because of getting on the team and everything, and I started placing those labels and meanings behind things. I started trying to understand what actually are these majestic people doing. Even when someone says, well, he's just charismatic. All right, he's charismatic. He's actually doing something that actually makes him charismatic. What is it? Because I need to have that. I need to imbue that in myself, because you can become that. And so it was that first moment of realizing, wow, my context of who I am is much different than what the rest of the world is seeing. So part of my life journey, and it's the 14th leadership principle in the Marine Corps, is know yourself and seek self-improvement. And that's all I'm ever trying to do. And it's understanding that what you're projecting compared to that which the rest of the world sees when they see you. And if it's not what you want, what are you going to do about it? You got to start adding behaviors to yourself. You don't have to change who you are. You can't. But you can add things to yourself and cascade these things on top of yourself, so you can have new, ass is still in here, deep down in here. But people that knew me 25 years ago, I've had this. I bump into classmates and people I went to school with, and they said, oh my God, Robin, you are not the guy I knew 25 years ago. I said, oh yeah, he's in here.
Always waiting to escape.
I have new muscle memory built.
He's always waiting to escape. You know,
Oh yeah.
one of the things I teach people in the work that I do is I talk about how we are motivated from two primary forces: that which is pain and that which is pleasure. And there's a pleasure which is you vision who you want to be, and that's joyous and exciting, and it's a wonderful thing to do. But you also need the pain, and that is, I call it the fire on your ass. And you need the fire on your ass. The problem with the fire on your ass is as you move further away from it, it's easy to forget that fire. And what you have to do is keep that fire with you. And so what I've done, and I teach my clients to do the same, is I go back in time and remember when I was the person I didn't want to be and how I could see myself going down that path. And I go, that guy still exists in a parallel universe. I'm into quantum physics. In a parallel universe, he still exists and he's fully blown out. So I know that guy is violent, alcoholic, drug user, asshole. That's the guy I was on path to become. Not to be the spiritual guy, not to be the psychological guy, not to be the leadership guy. And so, is he gone? Oh no, he's not gone. He waits. And when is he most likely to arrive? When I'm under stress. Because the psychological rule is, under stress we regress. So yes. I have to keep him on a rein. And the interesting thing about it is I have to keep him on a rein, but it's an interesting one. Because people go, do you like chain him up or whatever? No. I have compassion for him. Yes. I understand. Mm-hmm. I know why he had to be that way, because that was a survival mechanism.
Right.
I don't hate him. I actually love him. He helped me. But I don't want to be him.
Right. You became who you are because of him. It's so funny. So people ask me the same thing. I call it emotional hijacking. When that stress is induced, you go to the ancient mammalian brain, it bypasses the cognitive thought, and you're going on fight or flight with whatever your natural born tendency is. When I hit it, I want to take out a baseball bat and fix problems. So what I do is I recognize emotional hijacking rapidly through sensitizing myself. I know what my behavior is, and as soon as I recognize it, I then go into what I call science experiment mode. I now go back to the code of trust. Is what I'm about to do or say going to help or hinder what my ultimate goals and priorities are?
Brilliant.
And am I talking in terms of them? I'm seeking their thoughts. In other words, I start cognating immediately to make sure I'm starting to bypass the prefrontal lobe getting flooded and the emotional hijacking that's happening. So I go to cognitive mode as rapidly as possible so I can make my behaviors very congruent again. Now, here's the other thing, too. Can you do it that fast all the time? No. Now you know it's time to disengage until you can.
Right. Under stress, 27% of the blood flow to the frontal lobe, which keeps you sensible and working, goes away. And you become 27% dumber under stress. So if you're under enough stress that you can't do the cognitive process you just talked about, and you can't get yourself back there, as you said, and I think this is so often difficult, is remove yourself. And I've used this and I've said to people, I just say, you know what? I just got to go to the bathroom. And for me, I'm fast. I've done a lot of work on this. I know by the time I walk to the door, not to the bathroom, but the door of leaving that room, I'm already back. Yep. But I got to go to the bathroom because now I got to start processing back into where I need to be. But you're absolutely right. Disengage if you can't go back to that place. Yeah. Because the more you stay, the more the blood flow is going to go back to that reptilian part of your brain that's going to make you want to kill that person or make them your enemy.
And then say, and I've done this a few times and coached a few people do the same. Say you're in a meeting in a group or team building event or working on a project with someone and you're sustained for a period of time and you can't, in a one bathroom trip ain't going to do it. This is where that transparency and clarity making about them really comes in. And I've said before, I said, listen, guys, I am getting so frustrated. I'm so tense and stressed about this, and it's completely my fault. How about this? Let me walk away so that you all can do some good work for a few minutes so I can bring something of value, because right now I'm not adding any value to you whatsoever, and I really apologize. Completely my fault.
Brilliant.
And now what have you done? Vulnerability, transparency, open, honest communication. You made it and talked in terms of their priorities, making it about them, and you've endeared yourselves to them.
Absolutely.
And do you seem weaker because you said it? No.
No,
was Ronald Reagan, one of our greatest communicating presidents. I just spoke at the Reagan Library a couple months ago, and he used self-deprecating humor all the time. Yeah. And did it make him look weak? No, not at all. Because people that are secure in themselves have no problem poking fun at themselves at areas that during the election cycle they said, oh, he's too old to be president, and so what's the first thing he did? poked fun at his age. At his first State of the Union address, he said, "Hey, for my friends in the press and media that place a high premium on accuracy, let me tell you, I was actually not at the first State of the Union address to hear George Washington say that. Everyone broke up laughing, both sides of the parties. Why? Self-deprecating humor. Only people secure in themselves can do that. Now, you have to make sure you're combining competence with it, because if you're incompetent and you use self-deprecating humor, you're just validating you're an idiot. So as long as you are competent in certain areas, you're saying, hey, I don't see myself better than you in any way. Because as soon as you start thinking yourself superior, you're done. Because everyone just wants to be on an equal playing field.
Of course they do. Robin, this has been an amazing convo, and obviously you and I could chat for a very long time, much longer than an hour. But we are coming up on the end of the show. I want to ask you, what is the most practical thing that you hope a leader will take from what we've talked about today and what you've shared? What is the one thing that you want them to put into action in the next 24 hours, or even as long as the next 5 working days?
I think so. I'll add 2 things to this, if I could. One, you and I both talked about the importance of people having that cognitive switch between thinking in terms of convincing people things versus thinking in terms of how can I inspire them to want to. That's critical. It's hard to put that in practice if you've never experienced before, so it might be a little too lofty. But here's a way you can really do it. Here's some real two action things people can really do more of every second of the day. One, think of everyone you're engaging and everyone you have a relationship with. First of all, find their strengths. If you don't have a list of your, on a piece of paper or something, of the strengths, attributes, and talents of the people you're engaging with, figure them out. Because now when you're doing it, you're going to be seeking their greatness. And if you want to inspire trust, seek people's greatness first. Everyone's working on something. Take it for granted. Second is validate them. Talk in terms of their priorities. And so if you don't understand what their priorities are, you can't talk in terms of their priorities. So first, seek their greatness. And second, find out what the priorities are and make sure that you're talking in terms of them and figure out how you're going to be a resource for them achieving those priorities.
I absolutely love that. The next book I'm working on is called Deep Greatness. And one of the principles of that is to seek the greatness in others.
Absolutely.
If you want to find your own greatness, seek the greatness in others. Because every one of us, people probably look at you, Robin, I know they look at me and they go, I wish I had your confidence and your security. And I say, listen, I'm as insecure as anybody else. Mm-hmm. There are moments when I go, oh my God, I haven't got a freaking clue. But somebody in my life, I'm fortunate that person is the person I'm married to, but I have other people in my life who sees my greatness when I can't. Absolutely. And that brings us back from the brink. And when you say seek the greatness in others, I love that. And then you said validate. Again, the pieces you brought home today around that validation piece, I think is very powerful, very powerful. What you've shared with us is extraordinary. It's valuable, and I really want people to go out and get your book, The Code of Trust, of course. But I want people to reach out to you, to get connected to you, to tap into the resources. Please tell our listeners, our viewers, where they can find out more about you and all the resources that you offer, now that you're no longer Morgan.
Sure. So my website is peopleformula.com, all one word, peopleformula.com. Lots of links to some keynote presentations, things like that, where I talk about the Code of Trust and links to books and whatnot. You can follow me on Twitter. It's at RDREEKE, it's rdreek.com. What I post on there is a lot of science behind these things about wellness, mental wellness, happiness, prosperity, the things we talk about and how the science is supporting all that. And LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn as well, Robin Dreek. So I have no problem corresponding with people. I probably do it way too much. But hey, when someone's seeking thoughts and opinions, you want to share because you want to be a resource for the prosperity of others.
That's fantastic, mate. Listen, it has been a true joy, a pleasure, and an honor. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. It's really been great. And I want to remind you, dear listener, dear viewer, to make sure that you do reach out to Robin. Please give that URL again, please, Robin.
It's peopleformula.com, all one word. And my Twitter handle is RDREEKE, Rdreek.
Fabulous. So reach out to Robin, find out his resources. And, I say this to you every show, but please don't just listen to the freaking show. I know you play it in the background, but actually pay attention. Take some notes. Listen twice. I promise you, the second time you will hear more than you did the first time. It's just the rule of psychology. If you listen the second time, you will hear the things that your mind filtered out. And by the way, your mind will always filter out the most important stuff. So the stuff that you want to dismiss, that's the stuff you need to pay attention to. Thanks to Robin. Thank you to you for being here. And I want to say to you, dear listener, remember, the research consistently shows that one of the biggest challenges facing even the most successful companies is somewhat counterintuitive, in that these fast-growing companies often hit a point where they realize they're spending a fortune attracting, training, and developing talent, but they also have them leaving them at just an incredibly high turnover rate. If you're sick of investing in training and developing your talent, only have them leave you before you get your return on investment, then reach out to talk to us at fullmontyleadership.com, where we provide you with the essential leadership skills to rekindle and amplify the hidden loyalty assets inside your organization by tapping into your purpose. fullmontyleadership.com, providing the concrete soft skills to get you and your organization to the top and keep you there. Why? Because you can't outsource authenticity. Also remember to stop by the Matrix, matrix.fullmontyleadership.com, and get your authentic leadership matrix self-assessment tool. It's valued at $197, but you get it for absolute free because you're a regular viewer listening to the show. Matrix.fullmontyleadership.com. You don't need the www. Again, I'm your host, Dov Baron, founder of Full Monty Leadership, and I'm here to assist you tapping into your deep greatness so that you can reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, profit in your business, your life, and your leadership. Till next time, stay curious, my friend. Stay curious about whether you are tapping into the code of trust. Till next time, Dov Baron, I am out.